Democrats divided over a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, seen as a rebuke of Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's controversial comments. Now, a meeting of House Democrats today behind closed doors reportedly turning contentious as new members confronted House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other leaders, accusing them of rushing the resolution. So what does former Democratic vice presidential nominee Joe Lieberman think of all this? He joins us now. Sir, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be here.
This is really worrisome because you've got some upstarts who have just come to Congress with chips on their shoulders, and it's all playing out in the public, and it's very ugly. What's your thoughts about all of this?
First thing is that words matter, and when people say words that are biased, bigoted, and hurtful to another group of people, another group of Americans, they have to be condemned quickly, or else it takes hold. And that I'm not only thinking about anti-Semitism, I'm thinking about racism, I'm thinking about any kind of bigotry toward any religious group or any other group. So I think this is a time of testing for the House of Representatives, and if I may, it's really a moral test about how clearly they will speak out, in this case, against what Congresswoman Omar said, which was clearly anti-Semitic.
And she's only been there a short period, and this is not the first time this issue has come up.
That's true.
So Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, the leadership, it feels like every day that this is delayed, the more they tweak this, the more it evolves into somehow, in my mind, to water down or mitigate the damage that was done by this particular Congresswoman. I think the more they fail your moral test.
Well, that's why I think it's really important for the House to act, and to act directly. I mean, it sounds like the resolution that they're drafting now, which was originally against anti-Semitism, although clearly it was engendered by what Congresswoman Omar had said, is being broadened to be also a statement against anti-Muslim bias. Of course, we should make that statement, but I think the House could do better. And if it was up to me, I'd say, okay, put out a foundational resolution condemning all forms of bigotry, and particularly saying that if members of the House of Representatives, elected members of Congress, get involved in that kind of bigotry, they're going to be specifically condemned by their colleagues who won't tolerate it, and then to pass another resolution if they want, specifically condemning, criticizing Congresswoman Omar for her anti-Semitic comments. That's the best way to deter the next member of Congress of either party that says something that's racist or homophobic or anti any religious group.
It feels like in Washington, D.C., that, to borrow a boxing term, the Marquis de Queensberry rules, no hitting behind the head. There's certain rules, certain laws of civility, even in a brutal sport like that they vanished a long time ago. But to watch them vanish within a political party where you have the upstarts who are very vocal about their feelings, and they take to social media, but nothing seems to be slowing them down, and their resolve only, in fact, seems to grow greater and greater when there's pushback against them.
Right. So these statements that I take to be bigoted are earlier ones made. Congressman King, I know, said something that I thought was racist. Those things are not acceptable.
He was stripped of some committee seats, right?
Yeah. So something specifically was done toward him, and instantly. Congresswoman Omar's statements clearly do not represent the thinking of most anybody else in office in the Democratic Party. But if they start to mumble in response to her specific and clear anti-Semitic statement, then the party itself is going to be held more broadly accountable for having similar feelings, which I know they don't. So. Again, I say this is a moment of testing, moral testing. Speak clearly about it. Make clear to the Congresswoman that she went over the line. It's unacceptable. And you make clear to the next person who's thinking about expressing some other kind of bigotry that it's not going to be tolerated.
Yeah, I mean, just moments ago, Debbie Wasserman Schultz said it's anti-Semitic tropes. Again, it just doesn't, they're not hitting back hard enough. But I do want to ask you about the Democratic Party in the upcoming 2020 election. Again, it feels like there's a sort of social justice movement, a sort of identity politics that's bubbling up, and it's going to probably play a major role and who's going to be the nominee for the party. You've got a big pushback against some of the establishment folks, and it could get ugly. I mean, where do you see this going right now?
Right. So in American politics, our two great parties say what they're about most clearly during the presidential nominating process, and that's what's happening now.
Really? Because the narrative, Senator, is that they go too far to get the grassroots, and then they find a way back to the middle to win a general election.
So, but the door is open to in either party for every registered Republican or Democrat to come out and vote in the primaries. Too often, it is that small so-called core constituency that has disproportionate influence. So you asked me about the Democratic Party. This is going to be a contest for the identity of the party once again. Look, I hope the party remains a center-left party, which it's been at its most successful. If it goes over and becomes a far-left party, I don't think it's going to be able to elect a president in 2020.
How do they avoid it? In other words, who's going to be the leader that either tells the far left, which is a juggernaut, has all the momentum, that at the very least wait? Let's not try to have a complete coup right now as we try to win this next election. Who's the person that can do this? Because we can see Nancy Pelosi's having a real tough time dealing with these new.
I want to start with Speaker Pelosi, because what's interesting to point out, and I was involved in trying to help some of the candidates, is that the Democrats took back the House not because of the more left candidates, but because of the centrist candidates who won in swing districts. So that's what's got to happen in the presidential primary.
Senator, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Well, the news comes as allegations of anti-Semitism grip Britain's leftist Labour Party, with New York Magazine asking tonight, can anti-Semitism split Democrats like it split Labour? So are Democrats here in danger of losing Jewish members of their own party over their handling of what Speaker Pelosi called early last month deeply offensive anti-Semitic comments by Congresswoman Omar? Well, today, Pelosi called the latest Omar comments not intentionally anti-Semitic. Let's bring in Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and former Republican Senator from Minnesota, Norm Coleman, who's also the national chairman of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Senator. What do you make of Nancy Pelosi seeming to soften a bit on her characterization of these comments?
I think she's getting pressure from the left, and that's what this is all about. I actually applauded Speaker Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, the old Democrats, who originally, said, listen, this isn't right. Omar is an anti-Semite. Not everyone that criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic. Not everyone that criticizes someone who's Jewish is anti-Semitic. But if you have someone who repeatedly issues the target traffics in the classic tribes, Jews control politicians with money, they control the media, and they have dual loyalties, that person is an anti-Semite. So that's what you have. Pelosi originally criticized it, and then I think had to step back because the far left is pushing back. And unfortunately, that is the base of the Democratic Party today.
Well, and we heard in the Washington Post headline, there were several reports on what happened behind closed doors today. House Democrats erupt in protests over indirect sanction of Representative Omar for alleged anti-Semitism, because they're still saying they're not going to include her name probably in this resolution. The article goes on to say House Democrats erupted in fury Wednesday, challenging leaders over indirectly sanctioning freshman Representative Ilhan Omar. Zuhdi, what do you make of that? I mean, that there would be that much heat that they cannot get together in a uniform voice on this particular issue?
That tells you that the Pelosi-Hoyer leadership is really, they'll sacrifice anything at the altar of identity politics. And at the end of the day, we see happening in Congress where the UN went, which is the red-green axis. You have the coalition of the far-left socialists in the world, the dictators that are socialists, along with the Islamists, and sacrifice that is the Jewish community. And I have to tell you, as an American Muslim, it is offensive to me that she's not held to the same standard. If she was not Muslim, there would have been unanimous rebuke rebuke and it wouldn't have even been an issue. But she's being coddled and infantilized, and we're not being treated as equals. She's not being given tough love. In fact, they're denying that it's anti-Semitism. I would ask the Democrats to look up the State Department's report on what new anti-Semitism is. The definition of new anti-Semitism is the generalizations about Israel in a way in which to make the Jewish community appear in a bigoted way against them, and to generalize in conspiracy theories. All the things she's trafficking in are canards of tropes of bigotry against the Jewish community that is classic new anti-Semitism, and the Democrats are making fools out of themselves by not taking the bull by the horns and teaching her on-the-job training, which shouldn't have to be done, of what anti-Semitism is.
Yeah, and this is not the first time. As we've talked about, there are things in the past, but more than one occurrence since she joined Congress. Congressman Cedric Richmond said this. He said, I think there's a big rise in anti-Semitism and racism, and that's a bigger conversation we need to be having, but it starts at 1600 Pennsylvania. It doesn't start with one member out of 435 members of Congress. Senator, what do you make of them pointing the finger back at the president?
Well, I think they're trying to avoid dealing with the reality they have in front of them. And the reality they have in front of them is a member of Congress who is anti-Semitic, who serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. These are, by the way, this is not just new anti-Semitism. This is classic anti-Semitism. Talking about Jews controlling the media, big money controlling politicians. The new anti-Semitism is what she's also part of supporting, which is the BDS movement, which is a way to say Israel shouldn't exist, so we're going to drive Israel out by boycotting, et cetera, sanctions. And so that's the new anti-Semitism. But what you're hearing from Omar is classic anti-Semitism, and the way to deal with that is classically point the finger at somebody else, and that's all this is about. Democrats have to deal with this, and there is, I'm not, as head of the Republican Jewish Coalition, I'm not the one to counsel Democrats on how to solve their rifts. But clearly, there are Democrats. This is Israel, and support of Israel has been a bipartisan issue. That's changed. That's changed. The far-left Democrat base is moving the Democrat Party away from support of Israel and tolerating this kind of classic anti-Semitism, which really breaks my heart.
Yeah, and Zuhdi, quickly, what do you make of the fact that we're told the resolution is being broadened to include anti-Islamophobia as part of the language?
It's offensive to me that there's a moral equivalency between what the Jewish community has been through post-Holocaust and up to Pittsburgh recently, and to compare that to the, yes, there's some palpable anti-Muslim bigotry, but there's no way to compare it, and in many ways you water it down. We were told the same with the Black Lives Matter movement, and now we're told if we said all lives matter, that's insulting, and yet when it's clearly there's no moral equivalency between anti-Semitism and what's been happening post 9/11 to Muslim communities, it's offensive, and we should not insult Muslims by saying that there's some equality there, and it's a very different narrative.
Zuhdi Jasher, thank you very much. And Senator Coleman, great to see you looking so good. Great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you both.